There are countries you visit. And there are countries that rearrange the way you feel space, silence, and time. Mongolia does that fast. One moment, you're looking at a map. The next, you're standing in a land so wide it makes everything you call far feel small. This is not just a destination. It's a test of scale, a lesson in stillness, a place where the horizon doesn't end. It keeps going until it enters you. Plus, and the strangest part, for all its emptiness, Mongolia never feels empty. It feels alive. In the wind, in the hooves, in the smoke rising from a jar at dusk, in the old songs, in the way people still live with the land instead of against it. For centuries, outsiders looked at Mongolia and saw one story: the empire, the horsemen, the name of Genghis Khan echoing across history. But Mongolia is not only that. It is sacred valleys and frozen lakes, singing dunes and eagle hunters, monasteries rebuilt from ruin, cities wrapped in winter smoke, children racing horses across open steppe, families pouring tea for strangers as if hospitality were a law of nature. And if you stay long enough, something shifts. You stop asking, what is there to do here? And start asking, how can a place this exposed make you feel this held? Tonight, we cross Mongolia not like tourists, checking landmarks off a list, but like travelers being slowly pulled deeper into a living world. You'll see the places everyone dreams of, and the places almost no one expects. Because the real power of Mongolia is not in one monument, one desert, or one famous view. It's in the rhythm, beauty, hardship, stillness, movement, warmth, distance, again and again. And somewhere in that rhythm, Mongolia becomes unforgettable. So stay with this journey, because what begins in the grasslands will end somewhere much deeper. You feel Mongolia first through distance. Not history, not architecture, distance. The kind that humbles you. Out on the steppe, the land rolls open in every direction like the earth has forgotten how to stop. No fences for miles, no skyline, no visual noise, just grass, wind, sky, and the long suggestion that human beings were never meant to own this much space. Under your feet, the ground is soft with old seasons. Above you, clouds move like fleets. And then you hear it. Not traffic, not machinery. Hooves. A loose herd moving through the grass with that unmistakable rhythm. Alive, controlled, ancient. In Mongolia, horses are not decoration. They're not a photo opportunity. They are memory in motion. They carried empires. They still carry identity. And even now, they give this country its pulse. You can understand this almost anywhere in rural Mongolia, but to feel it fully, many travelers begin not in the capital, but in the heart of the country. The Orkhon Valley. A UNESCO-recognized landscape where rivers, grasslands, volcanic formations, nomadic camps, and imperial history all fold into one another. Here, Mongolia does something it does better than almost any place on Earth. It lets nature and history share the same silence. You ride across open pasture, and somewhere beyond the next rise lies the memory of old capitals, caravan routes, and royal ambitions. You stand by the Orkhon River and it looks gentle, almost too gentle. Then the valley opens toward Orkhon Waterfall, and suddenly the softness breaks. Water crashes into black volcanic rock. Mist rises. The canyon catches the sound and throws it back at you. This is one of Mongolia's great visual reversals. You come expecting endless flatness. Then the land tears open. You stand there watching white water plunge through dark stone, and the contrast hits hard. Steppe and force, silence and thunder, stillness and impact. That's Mongolia. It never stays one thing for very long. And this is where the story shifts. Because the Orkhon Valley is not only beautiful, it is foundational. This region was once tied to Karakorum, the ancient capital of the Mongol Empire. Today, the old imperial city is mostly gone. But Mongolia does not preserve memory the way Europe often does, with perfect facades and neat historical packaging. Here, history feels more elemental, more absorbed into the land. Stones were reused, empires collapsed, wind kept moving. And from that broken inheritance rose one of the country's most important spiritual sites, Erdene Monastery. You approach it through open ground. White walls, golden roofs, rows of stupas, holding the perimeter like a quiet pulse. It doesn't overwhelm by size, it draws you in by presence. Inside, you feel the atmosphere change. The air slows, footsteps soften, wood beams, incense, faded colors, prayer halls worn by time. This is one of the oldest surviving Buddhist monasteries in Mongolia, and if you've been traveling through the raw openness of the steppe, stepping into Erdene feels almost intimate, like the country has lowered its voice. You hear prayer wheels turning, a row brushing stone, a low murmur of devotion. And for a moment, Mongolia stops being vast. It becomes inward. That matters. Because for many Americans visiting Mongolia, one of the surprises is how layered the country feels spiritually. People often arrive expecting only nomadic culture and imperial legend. But Mongolian identity also carries the deep imprint of Tibetan Buddhism, older shamanic traditions, and a long history of suppression, revival, and resilience. Religion here is not always loud. Sometimes it lives in monasteries. Sometimes in ovu cairns wrapped in blue silk scarves on mountain passes. Sometimes in the simple act of circling a sacred place clockwise. Sometimes in the way the landscape itself is treated not just as scenery, but as presence. And that's a different kind of awe. Not postcard awe, reverent awe. Then everything changes again. Because Mongolia doesn't let you stay contemplative for too long. Sooner or later, it throws you back into motion. And nowhere does that happen more sharply than in Ulaanbaatar. The capital arrives like a collision. After all that open land, the city feels compressed, improvised, alive. Traffic, glass towers, Soviet blocks, luxury brands, old monasteries, coal smoke in winter, coffee shops full of students, a skyline still deciding what it wants to become. Nearly half the country's population is connected to this urban orbit, and you feel that pressure instantly. This is the coldest capital city on Earth, and winter here isn't just a season, it's a force. The air bites, metal burns your skin, breath turns visible and urgent. But Ulaanbaatar is not a city that folds under its climate. It pushes back. You see it in Sukbatar Square, where state buildings and public monuments hold the symbolic center of modern Mongolia. You feel it at Ganden Monastery, where prayer still rises inside a capital shaped by communism, capitalism, migration, and survival. Ganden is worth slowing down for. Outside, the city moves with friction. Inside, there is another rhythm. The great statue of Migje Genrisig watches from the temple interior with enormous calm. Candles flicker, offerings stack in color, mantras move through the room like breath. You don't need to be religious to feel it. You just need to be quiet long enough. And maybe that's the point. Mongolia is not asking you to understand everything. It's asking you to notice. Notice how a country can absorb empire, revolution, forced secularism, democracy, and globalization, and still protect something essential. But Ulaanbaatar also tells a harder truth. This is where many nomadic families have come after brutal winters, economic pressure, and climate shocks made traditional herding harder to sustain. Around the city, Ger districts spread across the hills. From a distance, they almost look poetic, white circles under big sky. Up close, the reality is more complicated. Migration, adaptation, inequality. Children growing up between inherited traditions and urban necessity, Mongolia can be dreamy, but it is not simple. And that tension gives the country its emotional weight. Because the beauty here is real, so is the cost of preserving a life tied to the land. That contrast stays with you. Then Mongolia opens again. South, into the Gobi Desert. And if the steppe taught you space, the Gobi teaches you scale in a harsher language. This is not the soft, golden desert many travelers imagine. The Gobi is more varied than that. Rock, gravel, cliffs, dry plains, ice-filled canyons, flaming red formations at sunset, and dunes that seem to rise out of nowhere like moving walls. You don't just see the Gobi. You cross it, you feel the dryness in your mouth, the sun on the skin, the wind against your ears, the strange quiet between gusts. Then the sand appears. Kongarin Els, the famous singing dunes. Massive, sculptural, cinematic. You climb them step by step, sinking, sliding, breathing harder, with the crest always looking just a little farther away than it should. Then you reach the top, and the world drops open. Sand ridges running into distance, light and shadow shifting by the minute, a line of green where water and vegetation still cling to life below. And if the wind is right, you hear it, a deep, low resonance moving through the dunes. Not loud, not dramatic, more unsettling than that. Like the desert is humming to itself. This is one of those true Mongolia moments. You stop filming, you stop talking, you just stand there, because no description feels equal to the sensation. And just when you think the Gobi is all heat and emptiness, it gives you ice, Yolin Am, the Vulture Valley, a narrow gorge in the Gurvan-Saikon Mountains where shade, altitude, and stone once preserved thick ice well into the warm season. Even when summer has changed parts of its old frozen character, the effect remains surreal. Outside, desert. Inside, cool air, steep rock walls, a compressed corridor of shadow and silence. Your boots hit stone, your voice echoes, the temperature drops, It feels like walking into a contradiction. That's why Mongolia stays in your mind. It never lets your assumptions survive intact. And the Gobi still has another shock waiting. Bayan Zag, the Flaming Cliffs. At first glance, they're beautiful. Burnt orange, rugged, deeply photogenic. At sunset, they seem to ignite from within. But this place matters for more than color. This is where some of the world's most famous dinosaur fossil discoveries were made, including the first scientifically recognized dinosaur eggs. So you stand on the edge of these cliffs, watching light burn across ancient sediment, and suddenly deep time becomes visible. Not abstract, visible. Under your feet, a landscape that once held creatures so old, so strange, they can feel almost mythical. You feel very small there, in the best way. Mongolia does that repeatedly. It reminds you that wonder is not always man-made. Sometimes it was buried, waiting. And Mongolia is not only this, either. It is not only emptiness, not only dinosaurs, not only dunes. Because out in the Gobi, life continues in forms perfectly adapted to what should be unlivable. Here come the Bactrian camels. Two humps, heavy lashes, thick coats in winter, a face that looks permanently unimpressed. They move through the desert with a calm that borders on arrogance. And honestly, they've earned it. These animals helped make trade, migration, and endurance possible across one of the harshest environments in Asia. Watch a camel caravan crossing open land at low light, and the image is pure cinema. But then you step inside a desert gur, and the story becomes human again. The felt walls soften the wind. A stove ticks with heat. Tea is poured. Maybe arog somewhere else in the country. Maybe milk tea here. Maybe fried bread. Maybe dried curds. Maybe a meal built from what this land can actually give. This is where many travelers feel the emotional center of Mongolia. Not at the viewpoint. Not at the famous site. In the welcome, because hospitality here often arrives without performance. You're cold, you're tired, you come in, you sit, food appears, tea appears, conversation exists even when language doesn't fully cooperate. And there it is, the Mongolian genius. To create warmth in a place of extremes. That is not small, that is civilization. Then everything changes again. To the west, to the mountains, to one of the most extraordinary cultural landscapes in the country, Bayan, Olgi, and the Altai. If Central Mongolia feels archetypal and the Gobi feels elemental, Western Mongolia feels mythic, sharper, higher, more remote. Snow peaks cut the sky, rivers flash through valleys, glaciers hang above summer grasslands. And here, among Mongolia's Kazakh communities, survives one of the country's most iconic traditions, eagle hunting. Yes, it's famous. Yes, it's photographed. Yes, it can be romanticized. But when you witness it up close, what stays with you is not the costume, not the festival image. It's the discipline, the bond between hunter and bird, the composure, the precision, the patience required to share trust with an animal powerful enough to leave. A golden eagle does not feel symbolic when it lands near you. It feels enormous, muscular, alert, ancient. Its gaze is so focused, it almost seems inhuman. Then you see it perched on an arm wrapped in thick leather, calm but never domesticated in the way a pet is domesticated. That difference matters. This is partnership, not ownership. Tradition, not performance, at its best. And in winter, with the mountains stripped to bone and the air cut sharp with cold, The whole scene feels almost outside time. If you visit during the Golden Eagle Festival, you'll see riders, regalia, competition, and celebration. It's visually unforgettable. But the deeper impact comes when the spectacle fades and the landscape reclaims the frame. A rider on horseback, an eagle under open sky, mountains behind them, no noise that doesn't belong. That image stays, and West Mongolia offers more than one masterpiece. There is Altai Bogd National Park, where some of the country's highest peaks rise above glaciers and broad valleys. There are petroglyphs in the region that pull human memory back thousands of years. There are lakes so reflective they look edited, and there is a silence in those mountains that feels different from the silence of the steppe or the desert. Heavier, closer, held by stone. You stand there and realize Mongolia contains not one wilderness, but many. And this is where the story shifts again. North, toward water, toward forest, toward a version of Mongolia many Americans never picture at all. Lake Kovsgo. If the Gobi strips the world down, Hovsgol restores it. Blue water, pine forest, high ridges, summer light, cold clarity. This lake is often called one of the cleanest and most beautiful in Asia, and when you first see it, that reputation makes sense instantly. The color alone can stop you. There are moments in travel when the eye needs a second to accept what it's seeing. This is one of them. You stand on the shore and the lake looks almost too pure, too still, too exact. Then wind touches the surface and the illusion breaks into light. People come here to ride, hike, kayak, camp, and breathe differently. And after the severity of the Gobi, Kovsgo can feel almost merciful. But don't mistake gentleness for weakness. In winter, this region hardens dramatically. The lake freezes, the cold deepens, the world simplifies into white, blue, smoke, and endurance. And beyond the postcard beauty of the lake lies one of the most unusual cultural encounters in Mongolia, the Ta'atan, or Duka reindeer herders of the far north. This is not mainstream tourism. It's more remote, more sensitive, and should be approached with care and respect. But as part of Mongolia's human mosaic, it matters. In the taiga, where forest replaces open steppe, life reorganizes itself around reindeer, mobility, weather, and intimate ecological knowledge. The atmosphere is completely different from the central plains, closer, quieter, more enclosed, branches instead of horizons, moss instead of dust, hooves in forest ground instead of open grass. And once again, Mongolia breaks your mental picture of itself. It refuses to be reduced. That may be its greatest strength as a travel destination. Every time you think you understand the country, it reveals another face. But if there is one moment when Mongolia becomes pure emotion for many travelers, it is not in the city, the mountains, or even the desert. It is in the home, in the jur. From outside, it seems simple, round, white, portable. From inside, it feels intelligent. Every part has a logic. Every object has a place. The circular structure gathers warmth, movement, family, and daily life into one cohesive space. You duck through the door, the smell of felt, wood, tea, smoke, decorated chests, painted supports, beds arranged along the walls, a stove at the center, light falling from the roof ring above, and suddenly all the abstraction disappears. Nomadic life is no longer an idea. It's practical, elegant, demanding, beautiful. A gur is not a symbol of simplicity. It is a symbol of adaptation, built for movement, built for weather, built for continuity. And when someone welcomes you inside, the country opens in a completely different way. Maybe a bowl of sute high, salted milk tea, maybe a rule, those dried curds with a taste as old as necessity, Maybe booze, steaming dumplings. Maybe kulshur, crisp and satisfying, especially during festivals. Maybe airag, fermented mare's milk, slightly sour, unfamiliar to many foreign palates, but deeply embedded in the culture of the steppe. Food here is not always about refinement in the way American travelers may expect from urban food culture. It's about climate, nutrition, storage, season, mobility. And when you understand that, the table becomes part of the landscape too. Mongolia tastes like survival shaped into tradition. That may not sound romantic until you're there, until the tea is hot, the wind is hitting the jur walls, the conversation is half gestures, half laughter, and the meal in front of you feels more generous than elaborate. That's when it lands. Luxury is not always what you thought. And this is where many travel videos get Mongolia wrong. They treat it like a backdrop, a place of drone shots and horse silhouettes. But Mongolia is not only visual, it is sensory. The sound of a saddle tightening, a dog barking near a camp at dusk, the flap of felt in the wind, the metallic click of a stove door, the smell of rain hitting dry ground, the sting of cold morning air before sunrise, the softness of a horse's muzzle against your sleeve, the long pause before anyone speaks. You don't consume Mongolia. You tune into it, and if you do, the country gives more back. Then comes one of the greatest expressions of Mongolian identity, Nadam. If you want to see the country's emotional wiring exposed in public, this is where it happens. Wrestling, archery, horse racing. These are often called the three manly games. But what matters more is the atmosphere around them. Pride, family, tradition, competition, celebration. Nadam is not just a festival. It's a cultural mirror. In the wrestling field, power becomes ceremony. In archery, focus becomes elegance. And in horse racing, Mongolia reveals something outsiders rarely forget. The riders are often children. Small figures moving with startling seriousness across huge distances. The races are long, the horses are lean and tough, the energy is raw. This is not polished stadium sport. This feels older than modern sport, older than spectacle. It feels like identity in motion. And even if you arrive as an outsider, you can sense it immediately. This matters here. Not as performance for visitors, as continuity, as inheritance, as proof that a culture can modernize without cutting all its roots. Of course, Mongolia has modern pleasures too. There are contemporary restaurants in Ulaanbaatar, art spaces, cashmere boutiques, jazz bars, museums that help visitors ground what they've seen in context, especially the Chinggis Khan National Museum, which is one of the best places to understand the larger historical arc with serious curation. That museum is worth your time, because if you've spent days feeling Mongolia emotionally, it helps to then understand it intellectually. The empire, the states that came before and after, the religious shifts, the socialist period, the democratic transition. Travel deepens when feeling and knowledge meet. And yet, even after all the history, all the landscapes, all the ceremonies, Mongolia saves one of its strongest truths for the end. It is fragile, not weak, fragile. Its ecosystems are vulnerable. Its nomadic traditions are under pressure. Urban migration is reshaping social life. Climate change is making extreme winters, desertification, and uncertainty harder for hurting families to absorb. This matters because when Americans dream of Mongolia, they often dream of freedom, endless land, wild horses, gur camps under stars. That dream is real, but it is not guaranteed. The The Mongolia that moves people so deeply is a living reality, not a museum piece. And living realities can change fast. That should not make you less excited to go. It should make you go with more attention, more humility, more curiosity, more care. Because the deepest reason to visit Mongolia is not to collect epic footage. It's to experience one of the last places where the relationship between people, weather, animals, and land still feels visible, unhidden, unresolved, real. So if you come here, come ready for scale. Come ready for discomfort too. Long drives, cold mornings, dust, bad roads, silence that feels bigger than your thoughts. Come ready for meals you may not fully understand at first. Come ready for landscapes that refuse to perform on command. Come ready to be patient, because Mongolia does not reveal itself to the rushed version of you. It opens to the version of you that can slow down enough to notice what most of the world has forgotten. Space is not empty. Silence is not absence. And a hard life can still hold astonishing beauty. That may be the real souvenir Mongolia leaves with you. Not an image, a recalibration, a new measure for what freedom looks like, a new respect for resilience, a new appetite for places that still feel untamed, not because no one lives there, but because life there still answers to something larger than us. And maybe that's why Mongolia lingers. Because after all the famous places, all the wow moments, all the horses, dunes, monasteries, lakes, and mountains, what stays is a feeling. That somewhere out there is a country that has not entirely surrendered to speed, noise, convenience, or control. A country that still asks something of you and gives something rarer in return, presence. So before you leave this story, hold on to that thought. Maybe the most extraordinary places on Earth are not the ones that impress us the fastest, but the ones that make us feel human again. Alright, now tell me, do you still see Mongolia as just another beautiful destination on a map? Or does it feel like the kind of place you need to experience for yourself? If this journey pulled you in, subscribe to follow more unforgettable places around the world. You can also like the video and share in the comments the one moment in Mongolia that hit you the hardest.